We're using virtual training programs in a number of ways. Primarily in a blended learning solution where we are doing leadership training in a classical sense, workshops, but using the blended learning solution, in other words, offering virtual training components prior to and after the workshop training. Now, our virtual components can be classroom training, but also can be coaching, because we do both. And it gives us the ability in a globe, when we're delivering to a global organization where we tend to bring people together from across, from lots of different regions, that we get them to be able to meet physically or virtually more than once. And this is simply, and our results from that extremely encouraging in terms of, being able to continue that network building, that relationship building, which takes place in a physical workshop, can then also continue in a virtual environment, particularly post the program. But equally, prior to a workshop program, we tend to find that it helps them, to build that network and to accelerate the trust building that takes place when we bring them together physically. The key benefits of virtual training are flexibility and cost. The flexibility part is that you can organize things, you can respond as a consultant to a global organization. I can respond simply quicker and arrange meetings, distribute content in so many more flexible ways. I could organize a meeting tomorrow or this afternoon, and global companies that I work with, tomorrow I'm meeting with the CEO virtually, and we can easily fix up with connect with the head of the United States operation for an hour. We can organize that today, and it's cheap, effective, and that's his primary thing. In a training environment too, it gives us ability to be able to, get people together for a brief period of time, for 2 hours, for example, which is typically a maximum for a virtual training event of some sort, and to address the key issues they have at that time. And so it has that flexibility, and then that leads on to the second primary argument, which is cost. There's no doubt it's cheaper. It doesn't take much to work out that that a virtual training strategy is vital for global organizations. You just can't imagine the costs associated with training people across the globe, but also equally managing the quality of it more centrally, which I think most big organizations do. So the virtual platforms are a very effective way of doing that, and the transport and hotel costs are your key savings in this area. So that adds to return on investment, and effectiveness of the program can really be substantially enhanced by replacing certain parts of, say, a leadership development program in this way. But equally, we're piloting change management, where we again do some other stuff which you wouldn't traditionally do, which is that you instead of having 2-day programs, you have 2-hour programs once a week. And in terms of learning and applying that learning, that's actually a better solution probably from a learning point of view, rather than having a concentrated 2-day, 2 hours spread out over for example, a 2-month period, so we can learn something, apply it, reflect on it, learn something new, apply it, reflect on it. And I think that's actually a better solution for a lot of the learning that we are trying to catalyze, certainly in our organization. Primarily experience with virtual communication tools in general. If you haven't used them before, it seems intimidating. Now, my mother of 80 uses virtual communication with my children, and has been now for about 5 years. And she's used to sitting on the iPad at our dinner table so we can see her when we're opening presents for the kids. And she can have a sense of being connected and part of that. So I think primarily it's having good experiences. And like with any meetings or any new technologies, if you have a bad experience to start with, that tends to then become how you define the experiences you have afterwards. So there are some challenges with people. How adept are they? But equally, some people struggle with situations they're not used perhaps to projecting themselves where they can't see the other person, because they're uncomfortable. Who am I? And feeling confident in that environment. And obviously a lot of the virtual technologies are audio, they're sound based. So using your voice and feeling confident using your voice, well, you can't necessarily see how that is being received by others, can be intimidating. So I think those things, but once people start getting used to it and have good experiences, I think they realize that this is a good replacement rather than hopping on a plane for 3 hours to go to one other city in Europe, or for that matter fly to the United States, which isn't an option for many organizations. The future for virtual training programs is a bright one, there's no doubt about that. I think we'll see them integrated into these blended learning solutions, which are a combination of virtual training, social networking, email, probably with some virtual coaching in the leadership development realm. I think that's where we're headed, and I think most global, or even for that matter, national leadership development training organizations have blended solutions. I think the virtual training component is a very specific part of that package, and doing that well enables you to give a very cost-effective program, because basic e-learning, which is rather simplistic. It's typically just answering questions, quizzes, high knowledge, cognitive kinds of things. And that is a part of learning, but as I got back to the key thing here is that virtual training gives you the ability to experience, to then reflect on that experience, to try something new. You can actually try things in real time, and you can receive supervision in the process of doing that, which makes it a very rich form of virtual or e-learning or something like that. A very rich form in terms of catalyzing, making people learn effectively. It also has the advantage too that it is a participant-based technology. In other words, you can create highly participative kinds of training environments. Some people have a vision that virtual training is a bit like a webcast. Good virtual training is not like a webcast, because that is in fact going back to sort of a very simple e-learning technology. So for me, the future really is starting to use these virtual technologies, mixing them with social media technologies, to give people this opportunity over a longer period of time to work on, learning new skills. So the advantage being, and the future of it, is shorter, higher frequency, rather than traditional training, which is very much the opposite. It's long and only once. And I think that doesn't really suit how most people learn. Most people would like to learn, they need to learn something. They need to do it every week, regularly over a period of time, so that they can transfer that learning from the classroom into something practical and then have the opportunity to get feedback on it. So I think virtual technology has a role to play in that kind of more on-the-job, natural kind of learning process. If I think of a couple of, if you like, factors that would make a virtual team high performance, one of which is this ability to be present and build trust in using virtual technologies. And that is a bit different to normal. It's the same process, but it takes on a slightly more mechanical, explicit character when we're working with these kinds of technologies. Where if you meet somebody at work, you sort of are using your implicit, if you like, almost unconscious ability to build relationships. I think what happens when we're trying to work with people in a virtual space is we have to make them aware of how do you build trust in an explicit way. And we use a term in our organization called swift trust, which is this ability to build trust quickly, to move away from just plain superficial relationships quickly, so that you can have challenging, constructive dialogue. Because that's what a team is all about. The hard part about virtual technology is that if you aren't able to get beyond the superficial sort of phase of just being nice to each other, you'll never get to this kind of constructive challenging dialogue that high-performing teams need. Now, that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is working out a way of making decisions and sharing knowledge in a virtual space in an effective way. If you like, the task side of it has to function as well. Because if people start thinking that it's slowing them down or they're not as effective as they would normally be, the technology itself becomes, if you like, the problem rather than a solution. So I think you need to work on the trust component, being present, being able to build, being more explicit about how to build trust with other people. But secondly, it's also being fairly disciplined and structured in the way that you do the task side of things, which is the decision making, the sharing of information, the monitoring of tasks and so on, where I think that technology can enhance that process, but you need to think about it rather than just, let it go. If you get both the task and the people side of that thing working right, you will have a high-performing team. And I think again, they're the same ingredients in any kind of teamwork, but what we have to do is do it with the kinds of tools that we have available in that virtual setting, which can be many things: social media, the virtual training or the virtual communication tools, but it can equally be things like using SharePoint effectively. It can also be things about agendas and following up on meetings. There's a whole series of other processes. And I think thinking about that and involving people, getting participation using these electronic media can be fantastically good, but you have to think actively rather than inactively. You have to be explicit about decision making and involving people rather than just doing what you normally do. And I think that those are the kinds of the keys I see in that process. We partner with Nomadic for a number of reasons, primarily because we feel that they are one of the few organizations that really understands the relational aspect of being effective with virtual teams and remote leadership. Too often, IT companies who sell these kinds of tools get focused on what the tools can do in functionality, that kind of thing. And I think where Nomadic's focus has always been and is the relationship side of things. They're very good at helping people understand that trust is the key to effective virtual teamwork and for remote leadership in general. But bringing that into this virtual environment and showing clearly how you can develop that kind of trust in that environment. And that their combination of understanding the technology well, but understanding, if you like, the psychology of virtual teamwork and remote leadership gives them that unique sort of thing, which I think means that when our clients are using and working with Nomadic, really value that they get challenged, because we work a lot with IT people. They really get challenged in the key area, which is the trust building and the relationship side. And how do we use this technology not just to do a fancy PowerPoint or whatever, but to get people to participate, to feel listened to feel that this actually technology is a better way than necessarily meeting physically to to do that. And I think that's probably the key, that they bring the psychological aspect, the trust building aspect, and then the knowledge of what the tools can do and how we can use them. Working with Nomadic, I think the primary thing which attracts me to working with them is that they practice what they preach. We work virtually. We plan meetings virtually. We run the whole business virtually. So we're always practicing and doing what this is all about. And I think again that focus on the psychological aspect, that focus on the relational aspect, makes for a good business relationship as well. And I think we've only in 18 months we've only met physically once. So again, they've demonstrated through the way that they work that we can actually do business extremely effectively with this technology and feel close, feel like we've got a trusted partner, and that's how it is. That's the first phase. So the relationship is one thing. The second part would be the competencies and skills, because if you're going to be convincing as a partner for us in this program, working with leaders, global leaders that work extensively, many of them, in virtual environments, you have to know what you're doing. You have to have some expertise to want to share that excites them, inspires them, challenges them, so that they can think about their own current practice and consider doing something different. And I think they manage the kinds of competencies that Nomadic brings into play in those environments. Has that expertise, has that skill. Not only can they use the technology fluently, but above that, they have an understanding of how it connects and can be used in a business environment. In other words, to get something done that's important. And that combination with Nomadic makes them a great partner for working with a number of the global organisations that we work with in terms of virtual training. The key strength of Nomadic is the ability to take a deep understanding of the psychology of teamwork, the psychology of virtual teamwork and remote leadership, and to convert that into a experiential learning environment, which is then delivered through these virtual learning experiences. And it's the ability to focus on the psychology of these experiences, the learning, and then the practical things that they need to solve with that, which gives them a key strength in this area of virtual training. Yeah, we recommend Nomadic actively to our clients. They partner in this area. We do some of the virtual training ourselves, but we believe that Nomadic has expertise and a track record of delivering these kinds of programs that make them an obvious partner for us when we're presenting virtual leadership development programs to a number of our global clients. Yeah, successful virtual training experiences require planning, like any learning experience. But when you're actually managing a virtual training session, which is typically a couple of hours, might be a little shorter, but not usually longer than that. Although I have heard horror stories of people sitting in virtual teamwork sessions that last all day, and I cannot imagine anything. I can't imagine that. But I know people do that. Being successful requires a couple of skills if you're going to lead those kinds of sessions, and it's something, one of which is the disc jockey kind of thing. You are sitting in this glass box and you're talking into thin air, and you can't see the faces of the people you're speaking to. And this is this sense of that can be slightly disconcerting. And getting used to that, there are some techniques for doing so, but using your voice to project, to send signals of confidence, charisma, enthusiasm through your voice alone is something some people need to work on. And it's certainly a skill that enhances the performance of it. The other side of it is, if you like, the air traffic controller aspect, because you have this sort of like screen in front of you where you can see your participants, the names of your participants, and you can encourage them to send you messages. You can write to them, you can chat while you're presenting. It's quite complicated, but so it has this aspect of sort of multiple planes needing to land at the same time. And it is important to think of a virtual training session as a fairly high precision thing, because the more precise, the sharper you are, the more you get your planes to land at the right time and the ones to take off at the right time, the more participants feel that there's energy in it and they feel that it's worth listening to and being involved in. So if you can get your disc jockey voice on, and you can feel confident talking to the microphone, and you can manage the various technologies like an air traffic controller, then you can be successful getting these meetings to work. And that's something we work on when we're trying to train leaders to manage, team meetings, decisions, project meetings in these kinds of environments. As if they do that well, they can really enhance the sense of effectiveness that people walk away from virtual meetings with. Virtual training programs have a central role to play in how global companies are going to develop their learning and development strategies. And the reason for that is that the particular kind of virtual training that Nomadic delivers is a growing category of interactive remote learning. So it has the aspects of an interactive classroom, and yet we're able to distribute. In other words, we're able to hold it, in several different time zones and several different physical locations at the same time. And this is going to be vital because most global organizations are looking to be able, cost-wise, to be able to bring people together, whoever needs to take those programs, and they want to be able to deliver it what I call just in time. They want to be able to deliver a training program on Monday or on Friday next week, rather than having to plan, 6 months, 10 months, 12 months. The advantage of the virtual training environment is this flexibility, that you can schedule something very quickly. And as I said, we're going to see more training that's going to be shorter and higher frequency than we've seen in the past. Training has traditionally been one-off, like 1 or 2 days, and that's it. And then you're kind of left on your own. When we talk about blended learning, we're talking about the ability to bring technologies like e-learning, social media, SharePoint, email, all of that together with physical learning experiences like classrooms and coaching and things like that. Virtual training, whether it be classrooms or also coaching, if that's a part of a virtual training experience, we're going to see much, much more of that, because the key thing to understand is it actually fits how people learn better than a traditional classroom way of thinking. People learn better if we can do it more, regularly, like every Monday at 9 o'clock until 11 o'clock, we do a session on, a part of the learning process. Then you can try something on the job, you can reflect on it, you can then come back to the classroom, discuss that, get some feedback on that process, learn some more stuff, and then move on. 2 hours every week over a 2-month period is better, and it's going to fit the way you learn on the job better than an experience where you just bring them together for 24 hours, 48 hours. Because what we notice from the impact assessments that we do on learning experiences is that the more we can touch the students or the participants, the more activities we do, in other words, the frequency is higher, they learn more. So the virtual thing's going to be the key to that. But virtual offers something that some of the other blended learning technologies doesn't have, and that is presence and a feedback in real time. E-learning is traditionally a relatively, you sit by yourself, you're going through e-learning modules, it's not very interactive, or the interaction itself is very mechanical, right or wrong. You can interact with the software in many ways, and you can do tests and so on. Now, that's great for some types of cognitive learning, knowledge-based learning. But where virtual training is really important is particularly on human and social skills, which most e-learning packages really struggle to teach. You can actually work on very soft issues like emotional intelligence, leadership, communication with a virtual training package that you can't do with an e-learning package alone. So I think it's got a great role to play, and also considering most global organizations want flexibility, it's to deliver it all over the world, but also they want to save the cost, the very substantial costs associated with bringing people in for training sessions. And I think finally there's that other aspect that global organizations too are looking for quality control. And virtual gives you this ability to actually still manage it centrally, but deliver in a decentral way. And I think that is a concern many global organizations have, because if you just rely on local decentralized partners to deliver your programs, you can sometimes wonder, what is the quality? So I think virtual training has that ability to give you that control of quality, but at the same time all of the benefits of flexibility and of cost.